Hi, I'm Sian Ricketts.
And I'm Tracy Cowart. Sian and I are part of the medieval ensemble Alkemie. And as this is an Alkemie and Friends production, we're joined by our friend,
Spiff Wiegand.
Thank you to Natalie Kress of Musicivic for inviting us to be part of this musicast. Sian, tell us a little bit about what we're about to broadcast.
So we're going to be performing some songs from 13th century Iberia. They're called the Cantigas de Amigo, and they're by Martim Codax. And as if you know Spanish or Portuguese, you might have been able to understand that they're actually songs, friend songs or boyfriend songs, and they are songs of a woman who is very sad at being separated from her lover. So we hope that you enjoy hearing this narrative unfurl and seeing the images that we've chosen to accompany these musical works. Following the performance, we will tell you a bit more about the instruments that we're using and the music that we are working with and other fun facts as seem appropriate. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for sharing this music with us. We hope that you enjoyed watching it as much as we enjoyed putting it together. We thought we would tell you a little bit about these kind of crazy instruments that we've been using, a real smorgasbord of medieval and other instruments. So I'll start. So this instrument that you see here, this kind of long stick with this very, very narrow hole through the center, is called a douçaine, which means a sweet sounding instrument. And this is kind of the great aunt of the modern oboe, the instrument that if you go to the symphony orchestra, it's the instrument that gives that first note that you hear that everybody tunes to. So this is obviously a little different from that. It is a double reed instrument like that, and it sounds like this, as you might have heard in the show, but it's nice to just hear it on its own. So that buzzy sound is a sound that people really appreciated in the medieval period, and we'll be hearing in some other instruments. So this is one of the instruments I played. They do come in different sizes. You saw me playing this size of instrument, but you might have also heard a different buzzy instrument on Quantus Sabides, which was a smaller version of this. They actually came in bass, tenor, alto, and soprano sizes. So that brings me to the other instrument I played, which is the recorder. And this is something that might be familiar to you if you've ever been a third grader in America or been the parent or grandparent of a third grader. And you might have heard them playing an instrument actually very similar to this, a couple centuries later ancestor of this. So this is a Renaissance recorder, unlike its later counterpart. It is all in one piece. And as you heard, it has a very light, very fluty sound, but is not a flute, obviously. These also come in different sizes. I brought one just for reference. So this is an alto size, and they start even smaller than this, and they get so tall that I couldn't even show it to you with my arms. So unfortunately, we didn't have any of those to show you today, but just be on the lookout for some giant recorders. Tracy, can you tell us a bit about your harps?
Yes. So I played two harps, and the first one is this Gothic Bray harp. We call it a Gothic instrument because it was used in Gothic times. If you think of the flamboyant arches of Notre Dame and the flying buttresses, this instrument has a similar shape here, and it also has that very noticeable buzz similar to, or at least friends with Sean's douçaine. Some people have told me it sounds like a sitar, which has sympathetic strings. This does not have sympathetic strings. What it has instead are these little wooden tangents at the base of every string, and that they just barely touch the tune string, and then they produce that buzz, which gives the instrument presence and a certain type of attack and a sustain.
And it makes it really nice for us to play together on these instruments.
Yes, we're good friends. The other harp I was playing, we sometimes refer to as Twinkle Heart, and it does not have brays. It also would have been the type of instrument that was played in the medieval period. It has what we often associate more with the sound of the harp, kind of that angelic tone. But both of these sounds were prized at this time, and they both play with Spiff's instruments in interesting ways.
My instrument?
Yeah, Spiff.
I'll start with the first one you heard in the show, which you may have recognized. Oh, the old accordion here. So this is not a medieval instrument. This came about, I think this version of an accordion was developed in, I think, the 1800s, mid-1800s in Germany. But the free reed instrument, meaning a reed that's vibrating inside something that you don't actually put your mouth on or your lips on. The oldest version of that is the sheng from China in just ancient instrument. But also harmonicas are that way. And this is kind of like a big harmonica in that it has these reeds inside it. I can choose different sets of reeds to play, and let me make sure it's all unbuttoned. And yes, it's heavy. Everyone always asks. So I've got the master switch on, which is everything.
Wow.
And then you can hear that one of two of these are in the same octave and they're slightly out of tune with each other, like this. So we get that lovely wobble. But I can get rid of that, and I can have a full, very organy sound. So I have a low set of reeds, a mid set of reeds. Where's that one? That is way up here. The clarinet, it's called. Then there's the piccolo. And then there's various combinations of all those. So here's the two middle, one of them out of tune with the other, and the high one. So I just have a lot of options. And even though this isn't a medieval instrument, there were instruments like it in the Middle Ages. Sean?
So this is kind of a combination of several different instruments that people were interested in exploring in the medieval and the Renaissance period. So in the medieval period, they did have an organetto, which was a small hand-pumped organ. Those were an organ functioning with pipes and not reeds, but definitely with the pumping concept plus the keyboard concept, they had that going on. But then they also actually became really enthused about a variety of enclosed reed instruments. So if you think about the bagpipes are an enclosed reed instrument, and the crumhorns, which if you haven't seen, I really recommend you just go ahead and YouTube crumhorn so that you can see some of those in action. If you want to actually learn about them, you can look at the Pifro crumhorn video, which is very informative and adorable. It's a great instrument. It actually sounds quite similar to this. It's like if this had a cap over the reed and I blew into the cap. I'm a double reed player, so I like to be in charge of my own reed. But I do like playing the crumhorn too. And they played also in groups of many different sizes. So if you combined an organetto and a crumhorn team together, you would get the power of the accordion.
Exactly. The power of the accordion to drive everyone out of the room. I'll start. There's a few instruments that I played in the show. This next one is actually an ancient instrument with a long, a long, continuous, that's the word, history. So you can find different frame drums. That's what this is called, a frame drum. You can find a statuary of them in like ancient Greece, probably even earlier. There's some really ancient stuff. A lot of them with jingles, like a tambourine that you shake like this or hold like this. This one doesn't have jingles. It's sometimes referred to as a tar. And even on those statuary and some paintings, you can see that people are using techniques that are still being used today. So it really is an unbroken long tradition of the frame drum. Basically, all it is a head stretched over a wooden frame. This happens to be synthetic, but in the olden days, they might be goat skin, or some of the modern rick, the little tambourine, is actually a fish skin, which is pretty cool. And there are different ways to play it. Slapping it in the middle, getting a nice deep bass sound, or playing the edge for that high-pitched sound. So that's the frame drum.
An extended technique of the drum you might have seen is in the beginning and the end of the video, you might have heard a whooshing sound that sounded like the ocean.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We used that one with the beads in it.
So
Tracy's actually playing that at the end of the show.
Right.
And
It's a good trick for anything that looks like a frame drum. You can just put beads and roll it around, and it sounds like the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have any medieval iconography of that happening, but we also can't rule it out entirely.
I'll show you another instrument that was around in the Middle Ages before I get to the other one that wasn't. This is I think the international name for this instrument is the trump. And it's actually called the Jaw Harp, or the Jew's harp, which actually is jaw in Old English. The Jaw Harp. So it's just a little key-looking thing that has a tongue on it. And I'll hold it up to the mic. You can hear maybe a little bit of it. It doesn't have a resonator on it. So in order to make it sound, you actually use your head and body as a resonator. So to do that, you stick it against your teeth very carefully, leaving a little space for the tongue to go between. And Then just relax your face around it with your lips. And I can change the pitch by changing the vowels that my mouth is doing and moving my tongue around like this. And you can also get breath effects by blowing into it. If you're really, really good at it, I'm working on this, so you might hear a little bit of it in the show, but it's a long practice thing, is to try to get pitch out of it by changing the shape. So let me see what I can do. So you can hear there's a little bit of pitch in there if you're really careful.
This instrument I was really excited to have included in this program because the jaw harp, or jaw harps in general, have been excavated along the main pilgrimage route that goes to the Iberian Peninsula. And so we know that these instruments were used to accompany cantigas like the ones that we did. Sacred cantigas in this case, but also secular cantigas.
And we see it in imagery too,
Yeah.
right, from the period in manuscripts, which is so awesome. It's an instrument that we don't necessarily encounter in conservatory as we study early music.
No.
And it's really had a life as a folk instrument.
Even though there was a in the, I think the Victorian era, there was a resurgence or a surgence maybe of classical works for these. I believe Mozart wrote a piece for it.
Wow.
Next program.
So I believe there's maybe one or two performers that go around the country doing the one or two pieces that you can find with the jaw harp. But yeah, it exists. And there's an Austrian tradition where they hold two in each hand and play like an oompa thing where they can do the primary pitches of the thing.
So another thing,
Versatile.
in your spare time, if you have any, to YouTube that maybe.
Let's talk a little bit about the banjo. So the banjo is a quintessential American instrument. It's not a medieval instrument, but it has its roots in African music and African instruments. The accounting is one that people bring up a lot that's very similar to the banjo. And the first references in America to this new instrument that the enslaved people we had here were playing is, I think, referred to as a banger or a banger, depending on how they pronounced it. And it's come to be an instrument that has a lot of different tunings that you can use and has different styles of playing it. I guess the accounting and other African instruments had maybe 3 strings total, but this high string that kind of rings out, this drone string, is very typical of the sound. So Sean, I think there's not a banjo in medieval music, but there are some corollaries to the banjo, right?
Yes, definitely. So you might have also seen in the images that we had, there was a lion playing an instrument along the beach, and that lion was playing an instrument called a situl, which is a quite different shape, but actually kind of similar structure and concept to what we see in the banjo. And that kind of pluck string instrument concept is very popular. One thing that we see in the pluck strings, they, as we've mentioned, in the medieval period, they liked exploring many different timbres. We've talked a lot about buzzy timbres, so we know that we like that. And it's no coincidence that we really love this buzzy banjo with our buzzy douçaine and Bray harp and the jaw harp. Like, of course we love hearing those things, but they actually liked hearing a variety of different timbres. So some of their instruments had frets, some had gut strings, some actually had metal strings. And so they created a very, very different timbre. So all of those were present in the medieval period. One thing that we think about when we think about combining instruments is that, so we don't actually have indications as to instrumentation from music in the period. When we work with medieval instruments and medieval music, we are just seeing on the page, often in the music that we worked with, it's just one line of music and text, and it doesn't give any indications about who should be doing it, how many people should be singing it, how loud it should be, if there should be any other noises. Sometimes there's no rhythms indicated, or we don't know what they are. So what we go on is based on these images that we keep that we keep talking about, we see people with all different kinds of instruments together. So we know, okay, people must have been performing with a lot of instruments together.
Yeah.
And we also have written evidence of different kinds of instruments that like to play together. We really benefit as medieval musicians from knowing that they liked hearing many different kinds of timbres simultaneously, which really gives us a lot of latitude to make a lot of interesting choices, which we did in this program. And that, apart from the references we made to, of course, the instruments of today are connected to the instruments of the past, but just knowing that conceptually the medieval people really liked difference and exploring difference makes us feel really great about the choices that we're making. And hopefully you liked them too.
Yeah.
A couple things that are modern that happened in the video are using a kazoo. So the kazoo, which I don't think it has a medieval, who knows? But there could have been some buzzy stuff. I know there was some buzzy stuff in China that used to stretch an onion skin across a hold instrument and it would get a buzzy sound. So buzzy things, they like it in the ancient world.
And today.
And today, we all love buzzy. I mean, distorted guitars are kind of a buzz. Those first happened with holes in the amp, accidental holes in the amp people decided they liked. And speaking of guitars, which is why I brought it up, there's one of the tunes that features Sian solo. Tracy and I plugged in an electric guitar, Tracy plugged in her harp, and we added a whole bunch of effects.
With a pickup.
Including distortions.
Yeah.
And so there's sort of a bed of noise that is not medieval noise that's happening behind one of Sian's solo pieces.
That we really wanted to explore in creating this atmospheric effect. We also wanted to utilize the power that we have not performing live for you. We wish that we could be performing live, but since we can't, unfortunately, in these times, we wanted to be able to utilize the breadth of things that are possible to us, which is layering multiple sounds on top of each other. So we really enjoyed being able to have you guys layer those sounds separately and to really think about how best to accompany what I sang. I actually just sang it myself first alone, and then they worked with that and accompanied it. And also in the piece with kazoos, we really dug into overdubbing different noises.
For sure.
Which is such a delight for us. Tracy and I are mainly live classical musicians, and so we don't often get to think about, well, what if I could sing 4 different harmonies on one piece? Or what if I could play kazoo simultaneously with myself? So that was very fun to explore together. Yeah. So speaking of overdubbing, we also wanted to expand upon the process of utilizing things that we couldn't use in a live performance visually. So as you may have noticed if you were looking carefully at the credits, we credited various images and puppets that were made by us. Mm-hmm. So what we did is I have this coloring book that my mom gave to me when I was quite young, I think, and it has very helpfully medieval figures from different manuscripts that they actually credit really accurately, which thank you, makers of this coloring book.
Great job.
So we scanned that in, and then we colored those through paints and colored pencils and created those paper doll or puppet images that you saw. And then Tracy
found, I looked through in our digital world, you can see a whole bunch of manuscripts online. And so I scoured the internet for images that could work as a backdrop. So I looked specifically for islands and a sea, which we decided would be our Bay of Vigo, and then just some waves. It's actually in the in medieval illuminations, it's unusual to just have landscape. They're often very crowded images full of boats and sea monsters, and so it was challenging to find something that was pretty plain. And even then I ended up extracting stuff and building up the waves so that we could have just a backdrop behind Sian. So I kind of layered several manuscript images on top of each other to create what we saw in the back, mm-hmm. and then Spiff with the power of green screen.
Yeah, I learned how to make a green screen video, which was all new technology for me, but I got into our software and did the best we could. We were really excited that one of the apartments we used to
to film at had a blue wall, which absolutely worked as a green screen. We were very excited. And we created that little stage with a table and found a backdrop, and it was actually a ton of fun.
And worked together to decide, what images should represent what scene.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to have multiple images to represent our main character? Do we need her different sizes? Do we need her in different places? When we put her in the church, that was our
Magnum
triumph, our magnum opus
Yes.
of we took her from a paper doll image and then we extracted from the Tracy's imagery
Right.
from the manuscript and we put her in the window of the church and adjusted her braid so that it was hanging over it.
It was great.
We were very delighted. So we were able to do that to illustrate this story, hopefully vividly.
Mm-hmm.
And also we were really excited to be able to use subtitles, which is really a wonderful technology
Right.
for us, so that you can see us performing, understand the language of the text, and see our figures as they go through this heartbreaking tale of lost love.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. So this tale is in fact, or this group of poems is arguably one of the first cycles of poems that we have music for. So if you think of Schubert song cycles, which are very famous in music history, as poems that all go together tied through with music that references each other. These are perhaps the first, it's the first example that we know about, a cycle of poems that go together with music attached to all of them. And we know this is a cycle of poems because this particular group of poems appears in several different manuscripts in the same order with one of them subbed in and out. Sean, maybe you could talk a little bit about this type of poetry in general?
Yeah, so this type of poetry was extremely popular, actually. It was one of the most popular forms of poetry in Spain in the 13th century.
The
this Cantigas genre. And specifically Cantigas de Amigo, there are thousands of them, of these poems, and they were usually from the female perspective, which we think is exciting as lady singers. It's always nice to be able to sing from a lady's perspective, although of course we like putting ourselves in the mindset of other people too. So it's from the female perspective. It's often about missing a lover. It's often about relating to the sea and going to the sea, which makes sense because Spain is surrounded by
Water.
Seas.
Yep.
And it's actually often about pilgrimage sites or going on a pilgrimage to somewhere far away, which you see in this work. We're really entertained to read that often specific sites were referenced as almost kind of publicity for a pilgrimage spot.
Like Vigo Bay is a place where you would go on a holy pilgrimage. But also, we have this song with this upsetting song about a woman who's waiting for her loved one to come home. But as someone else listening to this, it's a little bit showing us that there's potentially all these young women who are without chaperone, who are waiting for their men, but their men aren't there. All these just ladies at the beach dancing, and so it is a bit of
Where did you say this Vigo is?
Yeah, exactly. A bit of a travelogue for Vigo, as well as a story of separation.
And the scholars that we read emphasize that, of course, that doesn't detract from the musical and textual power of these works,
Right.
but all of these layers are working together simultaneously. So we really loved working with this text, and we especially felt that it resonated in this time where we are far away from our loved ones. Luckily, we're all here right now, and we're very, very happy about it.
Yeah.
But we know that this has been a time, these past few months, where we've been separated from people that we love, and we know that that's been true for many people all over the world. And so these kind of themes of loneliness or longing, we felt really resonated with the times that we now are in.
Yeah.
So we're hoping for improved spirits for everyone, including our poor lady in Vigo.
Including our poor lady in Vigo.
And we hope that you have a wonderful day wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and that you tune in again for more Musicivic Musicasts. Good night and thank you.
Thank you.